Hello everyone, and welcome to the Adam Kiss Show. And today I'm going to be talking about a film I admire very much, Chinatown. Surprisingly, I didn't see this movie until a couple of years back, and since then I've obviously seen it a couple of times. I've rewatched it several times. I absolutely love it, and I really can't wait to get into it and explain why I love it on an emotional level, why I love it thinking logically, and I'm going to explain so many things about it. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Hey there, and welcome again to the Adam Kiss Show. Before I begin talking about Chinatown, I want to take a moment to ask you to please like, share, comment, subscribe to the channel. We're going to be doing plenty more videos like this, and feel free to also comment below what other videos you'd like me to do. Some other movies you'd like me to talk about, some other aspects of the filmmaking process. I'm here for you. So just letting you know, definitely let me know what I can do for you. So, Chinatown. Absolutely epic movie. It's one of those movies that definitely always makes it on the list of greatest movies of all time, and rightfully so. It has great direction, great cinematography, a great screenplay, and I think screenplay is where I should start because I talk about this so many times. A great movie begins and ends with a great screenplay. And you can have a great screenplay that is then filmed, and the performances may not be so good, the editing may not be so good, but it might still work. Whereas if you don't have a great script, and then you don't have good performances and good editing, it can really fall apart. Or if you don't have a great script, it still might not be saved by the performances or the editing. But I find that really a great script is the most important thing. So many people have mentioned something similar to that, and I could not agree more. A story begins and ends with a script. And as a writer-director, I may be biased in saying that. I mean, certain directors in productions like Godard in Breathless, for example, I believe he would sometimes write dialogue right before they would film a scene. He had a rough outline, but he would sometimes only get to it the night before or the day of, which is definitely an interesting way of working. I don't think that I could probably work that way. But the script for Chinatown was written by Robert Towne. It's definitely considered one of the greatest screenplays ever written. I believe on some lists, some people consider it the perfect screenplay for the simple fact that it has great characters, great development. It has that amazing twist at the end, but nothing is ever out of place for the plot. It all makes sense. There's nothing like all of a sudden, there's no random, suddenly things happening that don't make sense, which sometimes you get in scripts. But I find that it's just an incredible script. The characters are wonderfully developed. There's a lot of foreshadowing happening, but nothing is given away too early. Also, the audience never feels like they're being suddenly ripped off, like suddenly this random thing happens and they don't get it. And even though it's a mystery, Chinatown is definitely a mystery, there's never a moment where the audience can feel totally lost. I mean, you're not supposed to know what's happening. You're supposed to see it through the eyes of Giddys, which is the Jack Nicholson character, which is why, despite the fact that you don't know what's going on, you're okay with it because he also doesn't know what's going on, which is definitely really interesting. One interesting aspect of the film for me is that John Huston plays a supporting character in it, and John Huston is known by most film buffs to be one of the greatest film directors. As a matter of fact, he's often credited with founding the genre of noir, or making the first noir picture with The Maltese Falcon. It was starring Humphrey Bogart. And that was from 1941, I believe. And it was one of Bogart's first roles, and it was Huston's first role as a director. I believe his father, Walter Huston, even made a cameo in that. But getting back to the point, it's definitely a wonderful thing to cast Huston in this. He was perfect for the part, perhaps even if it was just as an homage to the great noirs of the past. I mean, Chinatown is technically a neo-noir because it wasn't in the typical noir time period of the 1940s and 50s. Many film critics, film historians talk about noir beginning with The Maltese Falcon in 41 and ending with Touch of Evil in 1958. And Chinatown was in 1972, 1973, something like that, if memory serves correct. And at that time, this kind of revitalized the whole genre. It's called a neo-noir because it wasn't in the traditional period. However, it often, film critics and film buffs often make it to the top of the list in terms of it competes against regular noirs and often can win. Some people consider it the greatest noir ever made, and that it even tops several of the traditional noirs like The Maltese Falcon, The Big Sleep, Kiss Me Deadly, all those kind of films. The screenplay, I believe, took about 9 months to write, and it was written with Jack Nicholson in mind. Robert Towne, the screenwriter, he knew Jack Nicholson. I believe they went to classes together. I believe that they were also roommates at one point. Later in life, they had more of a falling out after the sequel to Chinatown, the Two Jakes, which Robert Towne did write. I believe he got a little bit irritated that Jack Nicholson rewrote some of the dialogue, so he wasn't very much involved. Robert Towne, I mean, wasn't very much involved in the sequel to Chinatown. Again, I've said it many times before here, there are rare circumstances when a sequel is better than the original, but they do occur. For example, the Terminator series, I personally would probably prefer Terminator 2 to Terminator 1, though I appreciate them both. As for The Godfather, I definitely appreciate Godfather 1 more than 2, so it depends. Generally, I would say that more often than not, I prefer the original to the sequel. But in this case, Robert Towne originally wanted to direct the sequel, and then I believe Jack Nicholson ended up directing it instead and rewriting some of the dialogue and inserting some voiceover narration, which Robert Towne didn't agree with. But the point is that the part was very much tailored to Jack Nicholson. It was there to showcase him, his strengths, his weaknesses, and the character itself is interesting because the film is shot in such a way that Jack Nicholson is in every single scene of the movie. His character is in every scene. We, the audience, only see what he sees, which is definitely a device that I have used in the past. It's a device that I very much believe in. It doesn't appear that often in films. Most of the times in films, you're cutting to all different kind of things. You're cutting to all different characters and all different scenarios. You're seeing that the classic thing is, okay, you're seeing what the good guys are doing, you're seeing what the bad guys are doing, back to what the good guys are doing, back to what the bad guys are doing. And that was typical for many years. Typically in noir detective films, they follow this format of following one character around. And what that does is it means that the audience doesn't know more. They're kind of brought into the mystery more. And that's why I love that as well. Even if it's not a noir-style film, I've used that device several times in several films. And that's really the reason I use it, to bring the audience into the story. There are several anecdotes from filming about people not getting along. And it's interesting because some movies are made where everyone gets along beautifully and it turns out a beautiful product. And other movies, like, for example, The Godfather, they say that nobody enjoyed a day of that. There was always stress, always problems, and then it ended up being a great movie. It's kind of like the Orson Welles quote from The Third Man, which I'm going to absolutely butcher now. I'm just going to paraphrase, but it goes something like, in Italy, you had all these years of war, the Borgias, chaos, and they produced Michelangelo, Da Vinci, and the Renaissance. Whereas in Switzerland, you had brotherly love, democracy, and peace. And what did they produce? The Cuckoo Clock. Again, that was a butchered version of that line just from my memory. But it's so true, because sometimes you can have a movie that's the most chaotic production and ends up making the greatest movie of all time. And other times you can have an absolutely smooth sailing production, and sometimes it just doesn't translate. And no matter how good everyone got along, it didn't end up becoming a great movie. But this is a great movie. In terms of the plot, I'm not going to go into any spoilers, but it's obviously a detective movie. Jack Nicholson is a detective. He's kind of an average kind of guy. He's not a very nice guy, not a very bad guy. He's just kind of average, a little bit of an anti-hero perhaps, but he definitely does have some morals. He does have certain principles which end up being shown in the course of the movie. And really the mystery keeps unraveling, and then there's the ultimate twist at the end, which nobody sees coming. It's definitely an iconic line. And then, of course, there's the ending, that iconic line, forget it, Jake, it's Chinatown, which is definitely, I would say, one of the top 10 lines in cinema history. So really, it's just a great movie. It's a great movie in terms of entertainment value. It's a great movie to dissect, to see how it's done. And I absolutely love it. Okay, that's all I have for now. So I hope you enjoyed this review of Chinatown. And definitely follow me on all social media, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, etc., etc., etc. And definitely hit that likes button, subscribe to the channel, comment down below what other movies you'd like me to talk about, or what other aspects of film production you'd like me to talk about.